Welcome back to the Bit by Bit podcast. In today's episode, I speak to Kieran Parker Moroney. It was my first time speaking with Kieran, and I really enjoyed this episode. We chatted for a while before we started recording, and Kieran has some really interesting views on things. I met him through a mutual friend of ours who's actually been on the podcast before, Alex. It was, I think, 3 or 4 episodes back, so if you've missed that one, do go back and have a listen. And I'm going to have both of them on together maybe 2 or 3 episodes from now. Anyway, before we jump in, I just wanted to say thank you very much to everyone who's written a review for me and for all the people who've reached out and asked me questions. I love hearing from people and very happy to chat or help if I can in any way. So thanks again, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, Kieran. Thanks for joining me today. I met you through Alex, who was on, I think, 3 or 4 episodes ago. We've just had a long chat, obviously, before jumping on. We've already covered some really interesting topics, but if you can just, as I say, introduce yourself to the listeners, please.
Well, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. I'm Kieran Parker Moroney. On Twitter, I'm at blockchain_rec. So I'm just a fellow Bitcoin and blockchain enthusiast. And I know, like you say, we were connected through Alex. So I kind of came across the tech in 2012 now when I was working in town. And I think I was telling you a little bit about it before the podcast. I set up an account. I thought, I read a story actually about Silk Road, as a lot of people have done. And the thing that stood out to me was Bitcoin. And I thought, that's really interesting. And looked a bit more into it, and I was like, I could see where this could be really useful just in life in general. And I went and I set up an account on an exchange, and I thought, I'm gonna buy some. And for whatever reason, with work and life, I got distracted, and it kind of went to the back of my mind. And then I came back a little bit later. I think off the top of my head, it was kind of early 2015, and I thought, right. I saw a few other stories, and I was like, I'm interested in this now. What was that company that I set up with? I want to buy some. And I went in my emails and found it, went on Google, typed it in, and it was Mt. Gox, and it came up with everything that had unfolded. So it's like my anecdotal story to people is how I on paper would have had, some great gains to hold on to, but I would never have seen them. Especially back then, because I wasn't aware of the different options for kind of keeping custody. I wasn't aware of ledgers or Trezor or any of that. I would have just left it on the exchange and been in Egypt. So it was, I think, a blessing in disguise, because it kind of led me into a deeper dive around the tech and what your different options and protections are. And then I kind of got more invested, rather than being put off by it. It just kind of fueled the fire. So that's how I kind of ended up coming across it. I think we all have these weird and wonderful stories, but that's a brief intro.
So when you did that and you were going to pile the money in, did you then do the calculation and look at that number and go, oh, that's what I would have had, or did you not allow yourself to do it?
At the time, as in initially, I was working as a broker in the city, and so I kind of would always be doing similar calcs in my head, and I had a rough idea, and even the rough idea made me want to cry slightly, so I never allowed myself to pursue it any further than there.
That would be painful.
It's my in kind of rags to riches story that never happened. It's
oh dear. But like you said, so if it was empty Gox, you wouldn't have got it anyway, most likely. And so maybe these things happen for a reason. And from our little conversation that we had before jumping on the podcast, it sounds like you have similar views to me, and that your investment now will probably do very similar anyway.
It's I think we're all here for the long term, and think this is something that can be properly world changing. So it's sometimes in the grand scheme of things, with the big picture, you think 2 years is it's not the biggest deal when you're holding.
Yeah, exactly. So after that, did you step away for a while and then come back to it?
Kind of not too long. I just was always keeping an eye on things and reading different articles online, and I was busy with obviously other bits of work, and I just would kind of dip in and buy a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of always keeping an eye on it in the background, but I wasn't too plugged into the sector. I didn't kind of realize what a vibrant scene there was on Twitter at the time or anything like that. And then obviously happened to mention it to Alex, or he did to me. I can't remember exactly. And we both were like, "Oh, you're interested." I think Alex said to me actually, like, "Oh, have you heard of this Bitcoin stuff? I'm really interested, and I've been doing it for a while." I was like, "Yeah, I am actually." And then it kind of spiraled out of control from there. And it was, I think I became a bit more active in a sense then when I had another person who was kind of local to me who had shared that interest.
I found the same with Alex as well, because I've only got 2 other mates who are interested in it. And I'm sure you found a similar thing. Like once it clicks and once you wrap your head around it, you want to explain and talk about this stuff all the time because, if we're right, it is world changing and no one gives a fuck. In normal life, no one cares. You just you feel like you want to chat to people about it and you end up just having to shut up.
Yeah. When people don't get it, or if they're not kind of aware of the theories behind it or the underlying tech or just any of that, I think it's really easy to sit there and look like the tinfoil hat person because you're kind of spouting off some grandiose ideas, and they kind of look at you, don't they, with the blank stare of confusion. Whereas when you kind of get around people that get it, it's a completely different form of conversation. But I think that's part of the nature of it, isn't it? Like you speak to people and tell them, and maybe they don't get it there, but they'll go home and Google a bit or have a search around and kind of dive in there. And it might be every 50 people you speak to, maybe 1 or 2 ends up interested, but that's better.
Yeah,
effect in a sense.
Exactly. Are you still working? In the city doing some banking and bits and pieces, or are you?
No, I left. I left in 2012, 13. Now I think it was. And I went into doing property and property development a bit, and dabbling around with that. And so that's been one of my focuses for the last few years. Which interestingly was another reason I ended up hearing about blockchain a few times just from some other people who were talking about it in respect to property and land registry titles and then referencing issues in different places. Like I think Haiti was one of them, about exploring how they could put land reg on there for proof of ownership. And again, it kind of just re-sparked more interest into the tech and diving back into Bitcoin and equally hearing about people trying to transact buying property for Bitcoin, and it was just fascinating. So no, I didn't stay in the city. I couldn't kind of keep up with the 80 to 100 hour work week life. I'm a type 1 diabetic as well, and I kind of value my health, so it's tough. I enjoyed a lot of the work, but it wasn't the right time, and that market was really suffering at the time, which feels kind of relevant at the moment with the world. I feel like since 2008, all of us have lived many lifetimes. So
yeah, it feels. Well, I was a little bit too young in 2008 to really understand it. The only reason I sort of vaguely understood it was actually my first, because again, we were chatting about this, I was also in property, and my first ever property I bought was, I completed on it 5 days before the crash came, and at the time, I went into my office and I said to my boss, I said, "Brad, is this bad?" Because I was just turned 17 at the time, and I said, "Is this bad?" And he went, "Yeah, mate, you're fucked." And I went, "Oh no," and I didn't understand why it was so bad. Yeah, and I'd been so excited about buying the property. I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to make loads of money." And because I'd been going to all these investor seminars with a friend of mine who'd been doing it for years. And so I got really into it. And then it was just like an immediate slap down. Yeah, it's, but now sort of after years of messing around with it, now I look at what's happening in the world and I'm like, oh dear, this is much worse.
All of those things are they feel awful at the time, but there's always these silver linings or lessons to learn, aren't there? And like learning that at 17 or 18 is so invaluable. I mean, I had a kind of similar thing, not one of my first ones, but just timing wise, that probably make you laugh, where I finished a project and I went to list it, and about 4 days before I finished it was the Brexit vote, which happened. And
yeah,
you kind of went to market like, okay, that's not ideal. But I think through all of those things, there's a lot of lessons that you learn, aren't there, and teachable moments. And funnily enough, that ends up kind of bringing you back to Bitcoin.
So what was it? I mean, I think we all sort of fall down the rabbit hole, and then you get to a point where this just makes complete sense, and there's sort of not any arguments left, or not any more FUD left. But can you remember one thing that really made you sort of like a switch flipped, and you just went, oh wow, okay, I get this? Can you remember, or maybe there were several?
Yeah, there were several, but one that sticks out, and I think it's one that a lot of us kind of go back to time and time again, but was custody. When I was reading about it initially as well, was this idea, I kind of reread the article a few times and ended up exploring around it, because I was like, wait, so it's mine. I don't need a bank. I don't need any intermediary. There's no one that can kind of interfere and freeze your funds or stop you from doing anything. And that kind of blew my mind as something that can function in the way it does. And then obviously you have all the underlying tech that then makes it something that's possible to use for transactions in a trustless, in quotation marks, way. So that kind of just immediately fascinated me, because I felt like it was such a departure from anything else I'd seen. Granted, I wasn't active in any of the kind of cypherpunk world, or at the time I wasn't aware of work that people like had done in the sector from years and years before, in the 90s and beyond. But for me it was all brand new information, and then equally I think for a lot of people the way it's been combined to form Bitcoin was. But I found that fascinating, and I was like, wait, so I can just completely eliminate any sort of bank, any sort of middleman there, and I'm able to remain in custody, have it as mine all the time, which I thought was fascinating. So I could walk, borderless in that sense. I could walk across a country border or fly somewhere, and I can have £2 million essentially in my head without any sort of issue. I found that really grabbed my attention. It was just fascinating.
But that is like magic, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
I wonder, actually, I've just realised just now that, I was saying before, I only have a couple of mates who are interested in this, and I don't really know anyone who it clicks with. Weirdly, the only people, and now I include you as one of them, that understand this of anyone I know are involved in property, either commercial or resi. And I wonder if it's something to do with, because personally, I always used to think I own my property. If I own bricks and mortar, I own that, which is actually wrong, I've realized. But I used to think, that is what exactly. It's like, well, can I collect rent from my tenant? Oh, no, they don't have to pay you. Oh, okay. Well, do I own it? No. The management company can do what they want, and they can rip you off and take your eyes out if they want to. And got all these sort of, it's not true ownership, but I always thought it was. And it's just sort of, I wonder whether there is a link there, because it's people who want to really own something. And I wonder whether people in the property markets will slowly click and understand this stuff. Maybe.
That's a really interesting point. Well, I was just thinking about it in that context of, if you're in property, you're dealing with banks and finance a lot, and you're not necessarily coming at it from the point of view of someone who's actually working in a bank. So I think you're maybe a bit more open to seeing the issues all the time. Whereas if you're working in a bank, again, not to tie everyone with the same brush, but there's a vested interest in keeping that system working quite often. So
yes,
there's that element of it as well, where you're probably more familiar with that and looking at a system like this and going like, oh yeah, that is ownership, and that is something that's interesting. And maybe in the psychology of a lot of people who own property, there is a desire to own something in a sense. So we look at that bricks and mortar, and like you say, initially you look and go, that's mine, and I own that, and then you kind of realize you don't. Granted, this is a digital version, but there is, there's a lot of libertarian politics in the space, and it does come under like a property rights view. So that's an interesting point. I'd not thought of it in that way. I mean, funnily enough, I did just see a company that was launched the other week. As far as I'm aware, that was like Algo Cap Real Estate, and their real estate brokerage, but I think they accept everything in crypto.
Oh, really?
And yeah, it's really cool to see. It was a guy called Max Dillendorf who I think he's based out in the States, and their website is live. I think I'll have a look. algocap.io, I think it is. But
okay.
Let me find, algocap.io. And it was just interesting to see, again, like a company that's kind of pushing the boundaries, and, you can pay for, large properties in premium areas using crypto. And I just, again, like you just talk about the property thing, that just makes me think of that, where again, I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting. It's another person in and around that sector doing something around blockchain.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think might because I've tried to explain, a few people I know who are heavily into property did very well from it. And I've sat down with them and said, look, you really need to just listen and try and wrap your head around this, because I think it's going to be big. And I've got nowhere with them at all. They cannot wrap their head around it. But I think that the other thing that property people might understand is, you have the Peter Schiffs of this world and Buffett and people like that. And they're like, oh, well, it's a non-productive asset, so it's useless. Yeah. The truth is that actually, especially like places like London, you're lucky if you're actually getting 1 or 2% yield. And when you actually then think, well, what's inflation? Well, actually, it's not a productive asset. So although a lot of the time people will think it is, but when you start adding in all the calculations of keeping in line with the regulations, the times that it's not rented, especially with all what's going on now with this virus, and how many people are going to have places sat there, they're paying their council tax, they're paying their mortgage, they've got repairs to do all the time, they've got management company fees. If you sell the property, you've got a load of taxes. You've got all this stuff that I think people don't really fully take into account, especially when we've had 40 something years of just number go up, with all bricks and mortar. And it's been so easy for people. It's almost like, not that they don't deserve it, they've seen that there's a trend and they've jumped on it and they've gone, right, well, this is how I make some money. But I think when times get hard, suddenly they start to see that, well, maybe this isn't the best business. We've just been riding a wave. And I think maybe some of those, as times get harder, which it seems like they're going to, maybe that's when they start to go, maybe it's not such a stupid idea to have the non-productive asset, especially if Alex was saying on here the other day, it's something like an average of 280% or something like that per year on average, something like that. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, when you compare it to anything else, it's like you said, even with property, like you say, in London, I see a lot of people accepting 1 or 2%. If you're really aggressive, you might be able to put some areas to 6, 7. Generally, I'm talking resi here, and 3 or 4 seems to be widely accepted. But it's like, if you're outperforming inflation by a couple %, it's not something that's going to get you excited and jumping out of bed, is it? Whereas you look at this as an option. And equally, I think like on that point, it's something that again for me was interesting, and I'm sure for you and a lot of people was this idea of protection against inflation, having this hard cap supply. Especially at the moment, I feel like it's hugely relevant. And we've all seen the money printer go brr meme. Makes us laugh.
It's such a good meme.
It's so funny, but it's so real. That's the thing. That you're looking and you're going around saying, the Fed's printing what number did they even settle on in the end? 6 trillion. And, they're on record basically saying we can just print as much as we need. And like I mentioned, I think before the call, I saw Rick Burton on Twitter mention something about it, and how many people are just really not aware of what is going on. And so when you look at that, you think, well, okay, Bitcoin is 21 million. It's, a hard cap supply. You've got, arguably like strong protection against inflation and what could very easily become hyperinflation. it just again becomes an interesting asset to put money into.
It's just it's trying to explain it to people, I think, is the hard thing, isn't it? I mean, how long did it take you to, I mean, obviously, you were in finance, you're in banking, you already, and property. So you already have much more of an idea of all this stuff than the average person anyway. But did it still take you a while to wrap your head around it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I say it with no shame, in the sense of I'm still learning. I'm always learning. With always keep an open mind and look at new things, and I never think that you're past being able to learn. So but it took me a long time, because I think there's a lot of aspects to it that are sort of like conceptual, and I think certain people need it in different ways. I found it really helpful seeing a blockchain demo of how it all worked together as the chain online, and how if I changed anything on that, on any block, it would change everything after that. And starting to toy around with that made me understand the relationship to things. But before I would read it, and the way I would word it to people was that I understood it in principle, but maybe not in practice. So it made sense to me in the words I was reading and how things worked, but I didn't feel confident in going like, oh yeah, no, I get that. And, I think people have to have some sort of level of diligence to look and to explore different resources and find ways that it's explained well to them. So, I know there's a bunch of different online courses, free and otherwise, whether it's on Coursera, or B9 Labs is a cool place, or Cointelligence, I think, do some. There's a bunch, aren't there? But just exploring and kind of rooting around. It took me a good while before I felt I had a somewhat comfortable grasp fully. When I first got interested in it, it was because I understood the claims that they were making and how that could be useful, from, like I said, the custody, protection against inflation, transferability, all these different things that I thought, okay, yeah, I get that. And if it can live up to that, that's brilliant. Whereas then actually getting to a level of competency with understanding that, it did take me a while, because I think it's, for me at least, it's so generally far removed from most things that you see. You have to start in some senses from zero and build up. I think I've spoken to a lot of people who are very gifted engineers and developers and who think in that way and are structured in their thinking. I think a lot of those people seem to grasp it very quickly as well. I think more for the general public, which, in a sense I'd count myself in there, is trying to break it down into sometimes more visual, but maybe even sometimes more simply worded ways to explain it, and then build up your knowledge from there. When you're so invested in the sector like we all are, I think it can be really easy to not realize how much specific language you're using to the industry, and people kind of look at you, glaze over, and you're like, oh god, yeah, no, I need to explain that. Like, it's what's a hash function, or these kind of things. All of a sudden you're talking about SHA-256, and people are looking at you like, what is that, a band or what? I don't know. It's
sort of easy to forget how much you've learned in a short time as well, because if you become obsessive about something, which I think pretty much everyone who's on Bitcoin Twitter, we are obsessive about this stuff, because we're on here all the time. Personally, I think for the last 2.5-3 years, there hasn't been one single day that I haven't spent a minimum of 6 to 8 hours researching, listening to podcasts, tinkering, setting up a node, doing whatever it is. There's not one day, even when I'm on my deathbed, sick as a dog, I'm still in bed, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm doing whatever. And then I look back and go, what did I actually understand? I sort of, you hear words, or you sort of roughly can string things together, but you haven't fully understood it. And it's easy to forget how challenging it is to put, why is the monetary policy so good? What is wrong with the current system? And why is it actually here? How does the cryptography work? What is open source? I didn't really even understand what open source software was, when I first started learning about this. And tying it all together to a point where you really understand it takes so many hours that you then try and do an elevator pitch for 10 minutes to someone. You're talking about all these obscure concepts, and they're just like, what?
Exactly.
It's hard.
There's so many strings to pull on. I know it's that kind of cliche thing of you don't understand something well until you can explain it to a child kind of concept.
Yeah.
I think it was design. I'm massively paraphrasing, but yeah, I get that. And I think, maybe there's an element of, I understand things, but I've seen people explain it in ways where I go, oh yeah, like that's so beautifully simple. And that's helped me massively. But I think you have to get to quite a high level of understanding and thinking to be able to tie it all together in those, whether it's analogies or just different examples that you use. So it's like, hey, when you're then trying to give a 10-minute elevator pitch to 30-second one or whatever to people, it can be really tricky. You start going, well, it's like distributed ledger, but it's, it's not, because there's this and there's that. And all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, well, that point's really important. And so is that. I better go into more detail with that. But then, it leads you down the rabbit hole massively, doesn't it? So it's tricky, but I mean, slight tangent. Sorry, I know I pulled you off there, but it took me a while before I felt more comfortable. And I think I'd say it does for a lot of people, because like you said, there's so many different angles and so many different parts to it, whether that's from like a philosophical point of view, political view, to the actual underlying technology, which is part of the beauty of it, I guess. But it equally means it's not something you can typically just sit down and you sit there and do a heavy read for 2 hours and go, oh yeah, I've got it.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the barrier. But it does seem things are getting it's much easier to point people in the right direction. And, like we were speaking the other day, because you were setting up your node and I said, go on to that BTC. Did you see? Actually you did see, because I saw you shared it today.
Yeah.
They banned his YouTube BTC sessions. For anyone listening, hopefully it goes back on, but it's really this great guy. He's done some amazing videos helping people with some of like the technical aspects, setting up wallets and nodes and all sorts of things. And it's really, really good content. And he's just been taken off YouTube. Do we have any idea why?
So as far as I could see from what he was saying on Twitter, he hadn't. He'd got some warning about a video he'd posted a year ago, which felt like a bit of a red flag in the sense of that it was nothing. It's been up for a year and it's like, right, we'll post that. But from what I could briefly see when I was looking, he said you're meant to get 3 warnings and then I think it can get to that point. But he literally had one and was taken off. So I don't really know. And it's weird because looking through the content as well, it's just really helpful stuff from what I've seen. The node video that you too was brilliant. 25 minutes long, really clear, really helpful.
Yeah.
As soon as I then went on Twitter and I asked him a few of those questions, and he replied within 10 seconds, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And you're sitting there thinking, like, that's brilliant for the community. So I've seen a few tweets about crypto YouTube being, or somewhat being perceived as being targeted at the moment from YouTube.
Tone Vase, I think, got taken off as well.
Yeah, so I'm
less relevant.
But still, you're kind of looking, going, okay, I don't really understand the motivation for this. All the time, it all seems a bit peculiar. You could end up going down some serious
conspiracy.
Yeah, rabbit holes to think about why, but it just seems bizarre, and bizarre timing, because like you say, over the last few days we've obviously been discussing it and interacting a bit more with some of his content. To see that this morning, I retweeted it and quoted YouTube and a couple of people saying, what is going on? I don't think anyone's got any answer yet, but it's concerning. And it kind of speaks to, I guess, the decentralized world that a lot of people, ourselves included, are interested in growing, because it's concerning when you can be deplatformed at the click of a finger like that. I understand it's a complex issue for a lot of different people, but from what I saw, the guy's just putting up really good, helpful videos to learn and about crypto and be educated and discussing different viewpoints. So
it's a shame, because the reason I got onto that is I think it's getting easier. I think things are getting more accessible. Definitely from when I started getting into this stuff, it's so much more accessible.
Oh yeah.
Because people are they're getting better and better at explaining things. They're getting better and better at, these videos are so helpful, because some people are more audio-visual. You don't want to just read through a load of text, and people are like, oh, just jump on GitHub and read through this. And it's like, well, hold on, not everyone's a developer. And, it needs to be accessible to normal people. So those sort of videos are so useful. It's such an amazing thing to have, and it takes so much time. I know from doing this podcast, it takes so much time messing around and doing your editing and uploading the things, and it costs money. And for this guy, it will have taken him hours and hours to do that content. And that's, at the end of the day, like, that's his livelihood. And it's just from someone snapping their fingers, they've just gone, right, you're done. We're taking you off. And he spent years, I think you said on there, 4 years building up that channel. And he spent God knows how many hours doing research and filming, and then they just click their fingers and done.
It's very disturbing.
It's worrying.
It's very disturbing, and it troubles me to see that. Like you say, it's not. It's a time-consuming thing to do, and it's helpful for people across the spectrum. So it's frustrating, also, when these things are done with no rhyme or reason, and it kind of drives home, I think, the importance for people of, again, custody, in a sense, being able to control where your message comes from and who's sharing it. I saw someone mention to him about, why don't, have you got the video saved? Why don't you just put them up somewhere? And I think he replied along the lines of, yes, I can do that, but obviously I've built up a following, and that's the difficult part to replace. And it's frustrating when you've spent a lot of time and invested a lot of time in doing that, to then have that taken away from you because you don't necessarily have that direct relationship with them. It doesn't sit right with me. I mean, on the note, circling back to what you said, though, about it being more accessible because of people like BTC Sessions and others, like, I couldn't agree more. Even just looking at the general UX now, I think in a lot of places there's still a long way to go. I was discussing this with a venture fund the other day as one of the areas. However, when I look at, if I wanted to tell someone to go and buy Bitcoin now, how easy that is and how quickly they can do it in a way that's not intimidating. It seems a lot more normal to people who are familiar with buying equities or doing anything like that. It removes that barrier to entry now as well, which I think, again, just can spark interest with people because it's easy to be involved. And once you own something, I think people are a lot more incentivized to go and do more research. I know not everyone works that way. You're probably like me and did quite a bit before you ended up buying anything. But
no.
The way.
No, I normally am, but I was really heavily involved in my art, and I was just in a headspace of all day, every day I was painting. And the bloke who told me about Bitcoin, a really good friend of mine, I said, look, let's just sit down. Let's sit down for dinner and talk about this, because I've seen him talk about it on Facebook or whatever it was. And I said, look, we need to catch up for dinner. I don't have any time. Here's some money. Just buy it for me. It sounds cool. And so he was like, and he said to me, he went, no, I'm not going to do that. He said, I know you well enough, because we're really close friends. He said, I know you well enough. I know this is so up your street. I can't tell you how much you're going to love this. You need to do some research. You need to buy. Here's a referral link. Here's how you do it. And he made me buy it myself and do the research. And I'm very glad he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just went, just chuck money in it because it sounds cool. That was it. But yeah. But yeah.
But then you did the deep dive after. But I do think, like, on the UX side of things, having it that bit easier. I mean, you look at the mobile wallet options you have now, and like ones I've been just looking at and toying around with, not necessarily using, but from BRD, and I know eToro does one, and you've got that wallet of Satoshi, and there's so many that are so easy to just set up. Shapeshift, doing some cool stuff. I think back to 5 years ago, and how much that has changed from an accessibility point of view. That's huge. I feel like I could tell a parent or a friend's parent now, how to do it almost over phone, and they'd be able to just set up and own something very intuitively. I think things like that are huge for the sector as well, because not everyone's going to just jump in and immediately understand the tech or why it's appealing. But if they're interested in it because they've seen it on the news and they've seen it as an asset and they've seen it increasing in value and that kind of sparks their interest, then, great. It gets them involved. And like I said before, I think when people own something like similar to a property, you're, a lot more invested in the upkeep of the industry and learning more about it in the meantime.
I think, it's that skin in the game, isn't it? You sort of have something to protect, and you're like, once you're like, oh, okay, well, if it moves in the way that we think it's going to move and has historically, and I've got X amount invested, then that means that potentially that could be worth, and you start calculating those numbers, and then it suddenly becomes a lot more interesting. You're like, oh, well, hold on, am I right? Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The first thing people should do is buy a small amount. Obviously it'd be really irresponsible just to say like, oh yeah, go and pile a load of money in, even though that's what I was going to do. But like, it is irresponsible and stupid. You should understand what you invest in. But once they've got, even if it's tiny, even if it's 20 quid, it's still like a little bit of fun and a bet, and it's something makes you want to learn.
Yeah, exactly. I think people are more interested, like you say, when they have skin in the game. You can't generally change that. It just makes people more focused. So definitely, I feel like that's where we should preface that with preface it with like, oh, this is not investment advice and da da da.
Yeah. Yeah, none of this is investment advice.
but it's interesting nonetheless. I mean, And then you combine it with just so many other factors. When I look at the potential it has, I mean, I was having a discussion / not argument, but a heated debate with a friend's dad actually the other week about it.
Dads are the best.
Yeah, well, he's a very bright guy, and so and I respect his opinion a lot. But when we were discussing it, one of the things he said, he's from the US, but was like, well, what's it backed by? It's not backed by anything. I said, well, neither's the US dollar. This was before the huge stimulus package, so it was more than a few weeks ago, I guess. Mm-hmm. When we discussed that, and I said, you can't go into a bank and exchange your dollar. It's not backed by by gold, and I know the gold standard argument's a whole other thing, but it was just kind of counter to his point. And he kind of stopped and was like, oh yeah. And, there was an element when we were then discussing it on a philosophical way of saying, well, why did people think that, say, the dollar, for example, or anything else has value? Because we all agree it does. And he was like, yeah, no, that's a fair point. I would then argue that with something like Bitcoin, you have the underlying value of the protocol and the technology behind it, which is fascinating. And so it's you're automatically in a kind of different ballpark of argument, which makes them a lot more, I'd say, open to the idea. But I think people are often, and I include myself in this, like we're trained to think in certain ways and not to necessarily question it, which you have to do because otherwise you'd never get through the day. You question everything. But at the same time, if people then can raise certain issues like this to you, it does shift your viewpoint slightly. And I think it makes you that a bit more open-minded and amenable to the idea that just because this is the way it's been done always doesn't mean it's necessarily the best way or the only option.
It's interesting that he actually sort of questioned it himself, though, because I don't find that generally with most people. No. They will just keep banging their head against a brick wall, and it's like, it's either, I'd say most people still think that money is backed by gold, like an alarming proportion of people, and like smart people as well that I've spoken to are like, yeah, well, it is backed by gold. And you're like, no, it's not. It hasn't been for many, many years. And they're like, yeah, it is. Well, that's why they keep it in the vaults. You're like, well, they don't. So you just do some research. You're wrong. But a lot of them believe that. And then even if they'll accept that, they'll be like, yeah, well, it's backed by the government, and that means, you can't have money without government. And they can't get past that. It's like, well, we have done for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Just, take a bit of a bigger view of history. Stop looking in a little 50, 60 year period and think that's all that humans have ever done. Like, take a step back. But yeah, it's a lovely feeling when you get people like that who do actually start questioning it. And I'd be interested to know if he comes back to you with any more questions.
Yeah, he did with a few actually, which was cool. I don't think to be frank, he'd be someone who'd necessarily be a convert, but I don't think he's the target audience in a sense with the stage he's at in life. It doesn't mean he's not someone who's open to it, but I think he's someone who will be interested in the tech, but may not be someone who's going to take a huge leap with it versus a younger person. But the point you raised there is interesting. Actually, it kind of raises a question in my head, which would be interested to hear your thoughts on, which is to do with Bitcoin as this hedge against fiat, in the sense of, I do wonder as well whether a lot of people view it almost as it's a store of value. I know that's one argument of it, but what it is in that sense then is a hedge against current fiat, and that what you might be able to do is say you have £100,000 in Bitcoin, but if the dollar keeps printing the way it is and hyperinflation happens, you're protecting that value and arguably increasing it. And then when either a new widely accepted world reserve currency comes into hand or a different change full stop, you're able to kind of dip in and out of the Bitcoin essentially, which has increased your purchasing power against fiat. So, not necessarily, I think, always people taking a position that fiat will die and that it's never going to be used again, which a lot of people kind of take it as, but that equally it's a strong option to protect yourself against what we all know are the weaknesses of it, while still allowing you to kind of operate in the world in that sense. So it's like a hedge / an option, which people don't necessarily realize it as. I feel like look at it for some people.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole hyper-Bitcoinization argument. And as much as I would love to see that, I don't see that anytime soon. No. I just don't. It's too much of a leap for people. It doesn't mean that Bitcoin doesn't have value, and it doesn't mean that we can't reach the targets that we talk about that most people would just think is absolutely stupid and crazy. I genuinely believe that we will get to the sort of numbers that we're talking about, but I don't think fiat money has to die for that to happen. In fact, I think that me and Alex were talking about this about a year and a half ago, and we said, ideally what happens is we continue as we are. We have the crash. We didn't know coronavirus was going to be the sort of the pin that pops the bubble, but we have a crash, and then they just turn the printers on and we just inflate the money supply massively. People start to lose trust in banks and governments even more than they already have. And we were already at all-time lows for trust in governments and banks anyway. And we said, the perfect environment is that happens, and then we have sort of 10 years for the tech to catch up and for us to make sure we have privacy and all these sort of things. And what we've wished for, like, if I couldn't have actually written a better script myself, like if I'd have dreamt of like, how can I make Bitcoin go to the moon? How can I make people want to use it? How can I make the value go up and make it more useful? I would just do exactly what every central bank around the world is doing and every politician is pushing for, because they're just digging their own grave. But it's not going to be overnight. It might be another 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, or they are digging their own grave. They've run out of options.
What we were discussing just before the call as well, though, not always, but successful revolutions or successful changes in perceptions widely held don't often happen at the snap of a finger. They are incremental sometimes through generations, and I think when you look at the profile of the people who you'd say would be necessarily ideal to adopt Bitcoin, they're going to be often younger, and they're going to be people that have grown up with the idea of digital ownership being something that's more native to them, and it's not such an alien idea. And they're going to be the people that adopt it on a mass scale. So when you look at I think we were discussing the kind of studies that have gone in, I don't have the exact numbers to hand, but when they're asking younger people about what percentage of a portfolio or what percentage of you would be interested in earning Bitcoin, and the percentage numbers are huge, they're up in the 60+% or some form of cryptocurrency, versus older people, it's a completely different answer, because I think it's a completely different mindset. And you might see those shifts coming through, but to get those people to the point where the wealth transfer and those decisions are coming to them takes time. Like you say, it takes years and years and years, but it doesn't mean that things like this won't help to drive adoption potentially. I see Peter Schiff on Twitter tweeting about, why hasn't this just sent the price to the moon? And again, I kind of feel like it's deliberately misleading, or is deliberately kind of missing the point of like, well, you don't expect that, 10 million people are just going to pick up overnight and buy a bunch of Bitcoin or be involved in the sector. It takes time to shift that, but something like this might be part of the catalyst that you need to even get people thinking about it in a way that they haven't before. Because people, it will raise questions for a lot of people. They'll go, well, how come they can just print $6 trillion? And $100 not really buy much for me,
Yeah, it definitely does. And also, like, the Peter Schiffs of this world who, like, I always used to say, like, we should just do we have, like, Bitcoin Pizza Day and all these different days and the private key day where everyone takes that you should be doing that anyway. But anyway, we have all these different days. I was like, we should just have a mass, everyone just unfollow and block Peter Schiff Day. But I've come round to because it's the only way that he can stay relevant is just tweet about Bitcoin every day.
Yeah.
The more I think about it, the more I think, well, actually, there's a lot of smart gold bugs, and they are right. Like, they were right that gold was better to store your value in than fiat, and they understood that. And a lot of it's this technical barrier. And the more that he tweets about Bitcoin and the longer that he's wrong, because he's been wrong consistently now for 8 years or so, since it was 50 cents. So he's consistently wrong. Every single day that he wakes up, he's more wrong than he was the day before. And the longer that goes on, some of these people who follow him must say, hold on a minute, this guy's just wrong. And if I'd have just for once not listened to him and actually done the opposite, I'd be a multimillionaire. So those people, I think, over time will get converted. And that's another thing. It just takes time for people like that to realize, hold on, maybe it isn't just stupid internet money, and it isn't just a load of kids who think they're smart and they're actually idiots. And maybe there is something to this. And at the same time, everyone whose value is being taken from them, their government are doing things that they're not happy with. And like we're saying, YouTube is doing things they're not happy with. And the more people who are just going to go, well, why not? Why not have a money that isn't controlled by anybody? Why not?
On top of that, I think with people like him, I mean, there's a few points. One, which is the slightly half joking, cynical one, which I'd say first, which is just maybe someone like him actually has a vested interest in Bitcoin. And there's sometimes you put deliberately provocative things out on Twitter because if you do, you get a lot of bright replies. And, you see some of those replies and they're really good rebuttals and they're really strong arguments, counterpoints that you think, okay, that's great. The other point is, I think any publicity in some sense is good publicity, is the old saying, but he is speaking about it, tweeting about it a lot to a big audience and exposing it to a big audience. And
exactly.
I think one of the ways I came across Mark Yusko was him and Peter tweeting back and forth, I think, from memory.
Right.
I may have that wrong, but you then talk about a guy who gets it on the other end of the scale. You've got Mark, who
really bright guy.
I'm cool with, and he's awesome, and he gets it, and he's really bright, and he's fun to speak to because he's this super open-minded guy who has a huge wealth of experience, which is fascinating, and again is someone who's not afraid to put stuff out there, be right or wrong, but get answers and frame things in a way that I think helps people with adoption and helps people to be interested in the sector. So I think there's a lot of benefits that can come out of something that people necessarily perceive as a con or someone who's against the sector when you actually reframe it in that sense.
Exactly. He's actually in a weird way, as annoying and boring as he is, he is helpful in that way, or he will be over time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it's helpful to see. Equally, I also think it's helpful to see reasons why people consistently argue against it, so that you can either think, okay, one or two of those arguments may have merit and I want to look into them, or a lot of them don't. And I think either way it can help you to understand the industry more as a whole, and to kind of see, okay, right, well, it's strong in these areas and it's not in others. So they're important conversations to have. Sometimes people do just troll, absolutely,
Yeah.
and they're interested. But yeah, I think we're all obviously interested in being censorship resistant, and that's part of it, isn't it? It's having people with opposing opinions discuss things and seeing why they may or may not believe that.
Yeah, like you say, it is nice to have people sort of challenge your arguments. I guess I think it comes to a time though, like after a certain amount of time where you've heard every argument 100 times and you can break those arguments down and come up with 10 reasons for each of them why it's wrong.
We've heard them 100 times and other people have, but that's kind of my point. I maybe didn't phrase it well, but is that new people coming towards it haven't, and they see
that's true.
They see these things and they're interested in it. Whereas I think sometimes when you've been interested and involved in the sector for a while, it's like you said earlier about learning. It's easier to forget where you've come from over a year, 2 years, 3 years, and something that was new to you 2 years ago is new to someone else tomorrow. And so they're important conversations to expose them to. Granted, like you say, it can be really annoying, and it's not how I would necessarily like it, but you can't stop it per se. And I think if you can take some good from it, it's a lot better than most people can.
It's a necessary. I mean, from your point of view, are there any arguments where, obviously from speaking to you, you're into this stuff and it's you believe it to be the future, but are there any arguments that people have come up with, you've spoken to people and you've gone, yeah, that's fair enough and that does concern me? Are there any that worry you?
Not necessarily worry, but when you talk about learning earlier still, there's a few that come to mind people have raised about transactions per second. Obviously, people discuss on scalability, and then you see people working on solutions like Lightning. And equally, there's arguments I've seen back, which is like, well, you're not necessarily trying to get it to replace, a Visa or someone like that. It's a different proposition. So again, I think counterpoints to that make me think, yeah, that's very reasonable. I have seen some interesting questions about one of which was, will mining become unprofitable if the price keeps going too high? Because, then more people want to go and get involved, which then means more computing power is needed, because the difficulty to solve the block increases, which means more and more electricity is used. And, that it can be this kind of negative reinforcement cycle. But it's not something I've really massively looked into yet. But I thought
mining death spiral and all that sort of stuff.
But I kind of thought that's going to be something that's obviously been raised fairly quickly, and equally that power usage changes and computing options change, and that there will be reasonable arguments for that. So yeah, I mean the only other one.
I mean, just to touch on that, because that is one that a lot of people will raise, and it is something that I have looked into. It really doesn't concern me. That is what the difficulty adjustment's there for. If we didn't have a difficulty adjustment built into the protocol, yes, that would be a concern. But clearly, Satoshi has thought deeply about the system. That's why it works so well. So if you do have a case where miners are saying, do you know what, I'm running, say, an S9, an older bit of equipment, and my power's at 7 cents a kilowatt or whatever it is, this is now not profitable for me. Yes, that miner will switch off. But what happens is, you then have whatever it is, 2020 blocks, I think it is, that the difficulty adjustment will kick in and they'll say, okay, well, now it effectively becomes easier for miners to mine. So the ones that have switched off, firstly, they're not on the network anymore and the difficulty has dropped down. So now the ones who have a cheaper kilowatt per hour or have better equipment, they now become even more profitable than they were. And then what happens is everyone else jumps back onto the network because they're like, oh, it's profitable again. And then it goes up. So we have a very clear trend of the hash rate is only really going in one direction. And these things are becoming more and more efficient. Although, say, an S9, an old bit of equipment, it's certainly not going to be, if I went and plugged one in at home here, not profitable because I pay too much for my electric. It's not efficient enough. No way would I do it. I'd be much better off just buying the Bitcoin. But if you're a solar farm that has built far too many solar panels and you have excess, or, for whatever it is, a wind farm or hydro or whatever, then actually that energy is free. And if it's in the middle of nowhere, no one has a use for it. Batteries are expensive.
Yeah.
So you can buy those S9s that are not actually useful for me anymore for basically nothing, plug them in with free electric. Why wouldn't you do it? So it's really not something that concerns me. And I think it's a really good FUD point. And it's something that people can throw out there. It's one of, there's sort of 5 or 6 main points, aren't there, that people bring up. And that's a good one because you have to understand a little bit more of the technical side. But to me personally, it doesn't concern me.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting to hear that because the other one, which doesn't concern me, but I've been asked a few times, is about transaction fees and what's being done to combat expensive, spiking transaction fees on the network. And, then you kind of come back and say, well, do they want to in the long run? Because the principle, it's going to be sustained by transaction fees. And, again, then it kind of is eliminated by the stored value argument that you're not necessarily going to be moving it all the time, and equally that there will be potentially, layer 2 solutions or other creative solutions coming up. So yeah, when I hear questions like that, they don't really concern me either, but I think they're valid and people are well founded to raise them to then examine it. But
absolutely.
But when you're looking into it, you say, okay, no, like it's, these are questions people have already thought of and answered in very logical ways. So yeah, generally, no, I agree. I think it's fascinating like that. So nothing jumps out at me like there. I mean, if you then talk about other stuff, it's interesting to see like the DeFi movement, is largely on ETH and people arguing, about why shouldn't it happen elsewhere and on BTC, but it's interesting to kind of explore that. But I don't. Are
you without like wishing to upset people too much? I personally see all DeFi, from my opinion, and I could definitely be wrong, as complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah.
But I know that there's a massive movement, and I'm sure that there are going to be some interesting things that are going to be built. I'm just yet to see them. And I think that a concern for me is just, I think it's mainly down to, I don't believe in ETH. So if these things could be built on top of Bitcoin, and I think they can be, I think there are some cool and interesting ideas out there. I just, I don't like something where I feel the foundations are sand.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely going to be something there, but I just don't know whether we've seen it yet. Alex loves Maker. Are there ones that you're particularly interested in?
No, I mean, I'm interested in the sector and I look at it and I think it's fascinating. I mean, Maker's obviously had a tough time, but I think there's a lot of people in there with there's a lot of really great people who are very bright working on cool ideas and cool solutions. I think any one of them would be the first to say we're super, super early in this. We don't know what I know there's never a final form, but just for ease of words, going to look like, when things are kind of settled down more. And I think it's quite exciting to see this kind of explosion of creativity. People aren't afraid to pursue all these different ideas and to try different things. Sometimes we run very fast with them and maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. It's a different argument, but I would say without standing on or sitting on the fence too much there, I am very interested by it because I think there are a lot of people who are a lot brighter than I am working on things, and I never know what direction it's going to end up in. And so I like to see people willing to try new things, be creative, get out there and kind of see where it goes. I think it's different when you feel like maybe as we know, there are people in the sector who have the wrong motivations and they don't necessarily really care about the projects that they're compiling. They're using it kind of for their own personal gain. But I think there are a lot of people who have really good intentions, and it's encouraging to me to see them just explore all these new ideas that just weren't even on the table, 5-7 years ago. And where that may take us, I don't know. So that's where I kind of rest on that. I'm quite supportive of the the exploration phase. But equally, if things can be done that are going to support Bitcoin, I'm all for it, because I think it's an incredibly strong value proposition, and it's interesting. It'd be great just to have more positive press around it as well. It would just add another feather to the cap of the BTC network. So, but I do view it as it's not always a zero sum game. And, there can be positives that will come out of one side that will benefit the BTC network as well. So
I'm actually with you there. Like, as much as I slate other projects, and I think that the majority of them are either complete and utter scams, just literally there to confuse people and take their money so that they can get the BTC, or they're misguided. I do think that it's good because, like you said, the more crazy ideas and the more things that are developed and the more things that people are doing, the more likelihood is that we're going to develop something else that's amazing and useful. Exactly. And it might be that 1 million of them are absolute garbage, but the next one that comes out is actually really, really useful. So I think it's really important part of it. And I definitely don't have any issue with people trying these things. I think it's brilliant. I think where I have an issue is where they almost give a bad name in some ways to Bitcoin, because if someone's come in and they've bought some shitty scam coin that's promised them the world, and they've gone straight in and they've bought that, and some people have, they've chucked their life savings into these things because the marketing is so good. The product is shit, but the marketing is amazing. So they've piled their life savings in, they've lost it. Now that person's never going to go near Bitcoin. They are going to tell their friends about it, and they're going to say crypto, and then their friends will then say, oh, well, that's Bitcoin. And it creates this confusion, which gives it a bad name unnecessarily. But also the positive side of it is there's so many projects and so much bullshit going on that it almost provides cover for Bitcoin, because the regulators are having to do so much to deal with all these nightmare scam coins that it gives us more time. And there's so much confusion that just no one knows what's going on.
Yeah. I think that's a really fair point. And it's frustrating because you have bad actors and people acting in bad faith, and it defeats part of the kind of underlying movement of what why people are interested in the sector, or why a lot of us are. I don't have a good answer for how to manage that, and I find it's frustrating because I see, it's frustrating. Equally, when people then point to me and say, "Well, look at all the scams that go on there," or it's some of it's used for buying illegal goods online, or da 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 da. I never really understand that argument, because I say, "Well,
that's a stupid argument."
It's used for? Yeah, it's. I think you can't really touch a pound note in the UK, can you, without it having some trace of a drug on it, let alone actually being used to purchase one.
Yeah, exactly.
There's con men and scammers have been around since history, let alone recorded history. So it's one of those frustrating things that I don't have a good answer for. I wish I did, but I just try and I see people doing things that I think are really positive in the sector, where they're trying to bring attention to scams and scam coins and shit coins, and that they're not afraid to call them out. And I've seen different people doing a lot of that, and I know that there's I've not done a huge amount of research into it, but there's On Yavin at Cointelligence. They're very heavy on the calling people out for scamming, which I think does a huge amount to protect people. It's a difficult position for anyone to be in on both sides of the coin, but when you're trying to make the sector more appealing to people, you do need to try and push against these bad actors. And it's cool to see people who have a lot of knowledge actually rallying against that, because it strengthens everyone then, which I think is positive.
Yeah. It is. I think it will. There's no way to regulate this stuff. It's going to continue. It's going to burn some people, but that's it's kind of natural selection. If you're going to go and throw your life savings into XRP or one of these things, and you don't really understand what you're buying, well, maybe you should have done some more research. Maybe there are good things that are going to come out of some of these projects. I'm yet to really see one. I like the idea of things like DAI and that kind of stuff. I do like the idea of having a stable coin. A lot of people are really against stable coins, and they'll say, oh, well, what's the point? You've got Bitcoin. That's the most stable coin. And yes, I agree, but it's not useful for everyone. There are certain people who just want to hold $1 because they want something that's stable right now. They're not really looking at it as an investment, or they want to take loans out and all this kind of stuff. And it's all interesting stuff. And I'm sure really amazing stuff will happen. And if we took the view of like, oh, well, nothing useful, nothing interesting is going to come 11 years ago, well, then we would have dismissed Bitcoin as well.
Yeah. And you look at, Bitcoin as the culmination of a large number of different people researching over a large period of years. So it didn't happen overnight. It did in a sense. It was released to us, but it was the culmination of a lot of bright people creating different solutions or, to problems. So, I think that's something that people can remember as well, which is important. And then I look at some of the cool ideas that are coming out the back of it. I know we were discussing before, like with your art, I see people doing these nifties and digital artists are doing things that can kind of promote ownership in a different way than has ever been experienced before. And I enjoy art myself and I collect a bit, but I find that a really interesting argument, again, just from a creative perspective of just trying things out that are new and unusual. You can accept payment for your art in crypto. And then you look at, I said, I'm a type 1 diabetic. So on the medical side of things, I think it'd be quite interesting to see some of these supply chain solutions being worked on, just even from a provenance side of view, because I do see things in countries around the world where fake insulin is put around as an example, and that kills people. So I'm not saying it's necessarily the best solution or the only one, but I think they're interesting and cool ideas that people are exploring that are helpful, and you don't know what the final iteration may be, but to see people kind of opening their mind and looking at trying to solve problems in a new and novel way can generally, I'd say, only be a good thing if it's done in the right sense.
Yeah, it's like any business, really. The more businesses that do something, the more likelihood that something good is going to come out of it. And with most businesses fail. And it's the same with these ideas. Most of them will fail. But part of this movement is free and open innovation, without regulation and without all that, which I'm all for. I'm fully behind that. So I would be a hypocrite if I said, oh, well, don't, ban them or regulate them so they can't do it. I would say let anyone do whatever they want. And if someone's stupid enough to buy some bullshit, let them get burned. But have enough people who understand this stuff to speak out and warn people. And that's all you can do. You can only warn people, and can only try and sort of help them as much as you can, which is why it's such a shame, like we were saying, these videos and things going down. And one thing which we almost went down that sort of rabbit hole, but a decentralized, if it can be done, a decentralized YouTube or Twitter. I almost think like if you owned your own character, basically you are you have your own username, no one can then shut you down. You put out your content and you say what you want to say and you interact with people, and you could maybe go across platforms. If we can nail that somehow, that is just going to be amazing, because that's the dream of what Facebook should have been and what YouTube should have been and what Twitter should be. And it's just that we have these middlemen sat in the middle, leeching all the money, applying regulations, and sort of saying, oh, we're doing it to protect people, but it's bullshit. They're not. They're doing it to protect their oin pockets. And
that's the frustrating thing there that you've hit on, I think, is a lot of the time, maybe slightly less on the libertarian scale than other people. But I think that, a lot of these regulations put in under the guise of protection, and they're not. And that, is incredibly frustrating because it's we're being treated like we're fools. You don't really see what's going on. And that kills me. I don't have a straightforward or a good answer just for the straight no regulation side of things, because equally I do see a lot of things out there that concern me, and I don't think it's a straightforward answer. But then, that's part of the interesting and good thing in the space is I then, through Bitcoin and through the podcast, I came across like the Stefan Livera one.
He's awesome.
Yeah, and I hadn't really ever heard of Austrian economics before, and I looked into that, and I don't necessarily agree with everything, but again, I like to hear different viewpoints because I think it helps you to understand the world and people in a different way. And then equally off the back of that, he came to London a while ago and they did a meetup, and I went along, and it was brilliant. It was really interesting and really educational.
Oh, you went to that one. Did you go to the BitDevs meetup afterwards?
No, I couldn't. Sadly. So were you there?
I was actually sat next to Stefan, and it was such a good meetup. I mean, 99.9% of it went over my head because that was a room full. I mean, I go to the other BitDevs meetups and there's normally like 4 or 5 people. This one there must have been 100, and it was just the smartest people I've ever heard speak ever, all in one room. And most of it went over my head, but it was amazing.
Yeah, it's really, and he was brilliant and took time to answer questions and interact. And I mean, we met at a pub, really relaxed and fun. Very London, that I know, but but, that's the interesting part of it as well, is being able to speak to people, and they'll have ideas and viewpoints that I would say, oh wow, I've not thought of it from that angle before. And maybe I like 20% of it and I don't agree with 80, or maybe I agree with 80 but not this 20. But equally, you're being exposed to things that you wouldn't be otherwise, and it helps you, I think, to form different views of things and to create different solutions, which then kind of circles back to what people are doing in the industry and why it's so interesting to have such a diverse amount of views and perspectives, because it's going to help people to create things and solutions that they never would before. You'd hope that you'd kind of avoid the groupthink problem by having that and having these different perspectives put forward.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. And we don't all have to agree. It's nice. It would be boring if everyone agreed all the time and thought the same way. It would be very, very dull. There are some big characters in this industry and people aren't really afraid to speak out, which is nice. But equally, people are very open to help each other. And like you were saying, I'd set up my node a few weeks ago. BTC sessions, really, really helpful. Matt Odell, really helpful. Loads of other people jumped in my direct messages and been helping with all sorts of things. Not just, I'll just write one little sentence or like send a link and I'll read this. Really helpful, step by step. Come back if you have any questions. Ask me anything you need. And I've not experienced that in another sector. People, you can get your head bitten off, and people are really passionate, and people have very, very strong views. But at the end of the day, they're really helpful. Like they'll stand their ground and speak their mind, but they're never unnecessarily nasty, and they're always really helpful, which is just so nice to see.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's people are passionate about the sector and they want to help, and it's cool to get that assistance. Even small things. Another example, when the crisis was kicking off, just in the general community, I saw, to use him again, but Rick Byrne put up a tweet that was about I really feel founders are having to shut down at the moment and let people go. And if you are, basically contact me and we'll speak about it because I've been through a similar thing or the same thing. And, I think quite a few people took him up on that from what I could see. And I was like, that's really cool. To offer your time, to offer your advice to people in that moment, and to even think to do that is a great gesture. So, it does help with that kind of community feel. People care about people.
How have you found, like I said to you before we jumped on, I know that you and Alex have got something going on in the background, and we won't get too much into it on this episode. I'd really like to get you both back on to talk about, because he was reluctant as well on the last one, so I want to get you both together. But how has it been setting up, because you're now working in the industry? Have you found a similar sort of thing? Have people been helpful? Have people been good, or have you had some problems?
No, I think most people have been really helpful. It's kind of either they're helpful or they don't respond, which is quite a nice mix, And equally, it's like you say, we won't really get into it now, but we basically
maybe just give us a teaser, a little teaser.
We're helping with kind of placing people in the industry and trying to support the growth in the best way we can. Because like you said earlier, I think there's a lot of really bright people in the space working on solutions, and they're a lot smarter than me. So I'm not going to create another company that doesn't need to be made, with all due respect. It's like, okay, you guys have got this. We can help in a different way. But equally, it's been tough because we were kind of just getting started right before the global pandemic struck, and it's changed the playing field and the operating field for a lot of people. And being we are a startup, not necessarily in your traditional sense that most people would think of, but we're a startup in, a very difficult time to operate a business. So, I think it's tricky but it's early days. Oh, excuse me. Hang on up. Let me just get out. Sorry, Matt.
No problem.
It's my other line. It's been tricky because we set up at the start of a global pandemic in essence. So, but a lot of the people we've spoken to and a lot of the conversations we've had have been just brilliant. People are really interesting and interested. And I think most of the conversations that we've had have just been kind of similar to this, where you're just talking about the industry as a whole to people, because that's the way I think most of us are in it. We all have this mutual shared interest, and you're each trying to find your own space in the world, and you just want to kind of show that. Whereas, then you say the other side of the coin with people that are kind of very self-interested and just looking out for themselves. I think usually those people, most of them get seen through pretty quick. So, it's certainly been interesting. I think, all we can do for now is kind of hunker down, weather the storm, and help out where we can. But it's interesting times. So I definitely would love to come back on with Alex. It's been a lot of fun. So we'd do a talk about really dig deep into what you guys are doing, because I'm sure there'd be some listeners who, I think, once you understand this stuff and you really get wrapped up in it, you basically get to a point where you're like, okay, what can I do? How can I do something in this industry, because I'm obsessed with it? And I'm sure that there'll be people listening who, maybe some of them already are working in the sector, or maybe some of them are looking to be placed. When you do come back, maybe come back with some roles of people that you're looking for. And, that'd be amazing if I could get one of my listeners to find their perfect job through you guys. That would be amazing. And it's all about building that network and getting people into the roles they want to work in. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to.
Excellent. All right. Well, listen, we've been blabbing for a couple of hours now, or mainly me, but I have a crying puppy downstairs. But before we jump off the call, I just wanted to, I've always ask this question just because it's something that fascinates me. Do you have any sort of thoughts around who you think Satoshi might be, or do you have any sort of weird conspiracy theory, or do you just completely just don't care?
No, I have thought about it a bit. I think it's really interesting. Part of me thinks it's like a consortium.
Okay.
And that kind of pseudonym is maybe some sort of nod we don't get, or we do get, but to a group of people that have made it possible. I wouldn't even know where to start. I've seen so many legitimate guesses thrown around, and there's so many amazing people that have kind of contributed to getting it in its final form that I wouldn't really know. I don't have a strong guess. Part of me, like I say, kind of just thinks it might be, a few people involved, which is maybe one of the reasons why it's so hard to pin down to just one person. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I don't care. I would love to know. I think it'd be fascinating, but it's quite nice in a way, that mystery, because it doesn't spoil your enjoyment of the product.
It protects the system, really. Yeah. But just like, I have a similar view, and it doesn't matter, but it's just like, because we spend so much time on this stuff, I'd love to, like, even if I just knew myself and like I could never tell anyone else, or if I tried to tell someone else, I'd instantly die. I'd love to know, because it's just whoever's done it, and I think, thinking it's a group of people is very reasonable thought, because it links so many different disciplines together that to think if it is one person, I just can't even imagine how bright that one person is. But even if it's a group of 100 people, I can't imagine how bright they are. It would be lovely to know, even if you only knew and you couldn't tell anyone.
I don't think it was the poor bloke that they plastered across the news.
Oh no, definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah, I that would be the ultimate twist. It'd be like some kind of ending thing, but
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, anything else you wanted to touch on before we jump off the call, or
There's always more stuff. I think maybe I'll save some for the next call, but sure. I mean, otherwise I'll keep you on there for another hour. But
I'll happily go all day. But I try and keep them under a couple of hours. And like we say, we'll definitely get you on again. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Same here.
we'll have to do a little meetup in London or something. Do a little Bitcoin and stake meetup or something like that.
Yeah, you just mentioned two of my favourite things, so that's not a hard sell.
All right, perfect. Well, just tell everyone again where they can get in contact with you. So if anyone wants to get in touch.
Yeah, so best place is probably Twitter, which is blockchain_rec. That's REC, the last bit. I mean, our website is www.blockchainrecruit.careers. But I'd say they're the two best. And, there's a contact form on there, but equally you can just DM me and we can chat. Always available on there. So.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, yeah, listen, thanks again for coming on. I've really, really enjoyed it. I look forward to getting you both on the next one. And I'm sure we'll speak over the next couple of days anyway, when you're setting up your node and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's all ordered. So thanks for the help. And
no worries.
For having me on. I really enjoyed it. So.
All right. Excellent. All right. Well, we'll speak again soon. Cheers.
Right. Thanks, Matt. Bye.